And when you, as a UN watcher, you denounce, and you do it all the time, this kind of a manipulation, we know the reaction by different governments. You mentioned our government in Italy, Canada, and others. Member states of the European Union have more or less the same attitude, but I stress more or less. There are nuances also there, unfortunately now. But I would like to ask you, which is the reaction to your denouncement from the part of the UN system, from the part of people involved into the UN staff, UN hierarchy? I ask you this because sometimes my impression is that at the end of the day now UN is working as a sort of a company, I mean, as a sort of undertaking in which there is a CEO, which is the Secretary General in the case, who has to respond to the main stakeholders of the company. So inevitably is aligning himself with the majority of stakeholders, which is something very much different, and then we come back on it, from the kind of mission we gave in 1945 to the UN.
Yes, it's the UN that we envisioned in the post-war is not really the UN that we have. It's true that the UN was always a compromise between vision and principles, ideals, and realpolitik. We remember, of course, that Stalin and the Soviet Union, what today is called Russia, was a permanent member of the Security Council with the veto from the beginning. Obviously, there was a compromise with realpolitik, but there was a tremendous idealism after World War II. People really hoped that the UN would be a body fighting for good, and pretty quickly, this was not the case. And as you said, today at least half the country members are not democratic, and they seem to have a lot of the energy. Now, if you talk about the Secretary General, he is trying to appease two constituencies. One is the broad membership, which includes 56 Islamic states. It includes more than 100 members, I don't know the exact number, if it's 120 members of the so-called non-aligned movement, which, as we know, does have an alignment. They were often aligned with the Soviet Union, and they were very much an anti-Western alliance with leaders like Cuba, today Iran, Venezuela, are the leaders in the non-aligned movement. So on the one hand, the Secretary General is often working to appease this majority and to go along with the peer pressure of the anti-Western, anti-Israel countries. Of course, he also needs to look at the permanent members, like the US, like Russia, like China. And the easiest thing for him, in many cases, is to go after Israel. You end up making happy, China and Russia are very happy if you go after Israel. The Islamic states are happy, the Arab states, and sadly, the leading human rights groups, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, have become very radical anti-Western, very anti-Israel. So the easy thing that gets you credit, when you walk into the room of the human rights groups, you say, I condemned Israel, you get credit. And he certainly risks today getting opposition from America. But so far, we don't have an ambassador. Unfortunately, Trump hasn't yet named an ambassador. I just read in the news today that President Trump's nominee, whose name is Mike Waltz, he was the national security advisor. He's going to go up for a hearing in the Senate next week, and we hope he will be confirmed. I will recall that President Trump did nominate Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, but then he pulled her nomination because he couldn't afford to let her leave the Congress because the majority is too thin of the Republican Party. So he pulled her nomination, and instead he's nominated Mike Waltz. He's a very intelligent, talented man, and I hope that he will be confirmed soon and that we could work with him, because so far Trump does not have an ambassador in New York at the UN. He does not have an ambassador in Geneva at the UN. So that's missing. So hopefully with an ambassador, they could put pressure on Guterres, because indeed, as you said, the CEO, his name is Secretary General, often he's more secretary than he is general. He often is a weak character who tries to appease this group or that power. And it's easy for him, on China, he does nothing. He never condemns China. He goes against climate change. He goes against the warming of the ocean. It's very easy. You don't get any pushback if you go against the climate. And he goes against Israel. Sadly, since October 7th, the name of your organization is Sette Ottobre. Sadly, since October 7th, Mr. Guterres has been horrible. Many, many statements against Israel, never condemning UN officials who are biased. So I would say Guterres has been a tremendous disappointment.